We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 4, episode number 36. And yeah, man, we here at the weekend, man. I hope you guys have had a great week. Man, there's been a lot going on across the sporting landscape. We got Major League Baseball back into the fold, as my Cubs, man, took 2 losses, man, over in Tokyo in the Tokyo series with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the homecoming of Shohei Ohtani. And I'm definitely geeked up about that. Also, can't forget, how can we forget, we got the NCAA Tournament jumping off. Yeah, man, that thing jumped off yesterday, man, as we had the matchups across the slate Thursday, as well as we got some matchups coming up pretty soon today. As that thing is off the chain. Man, it's been just a great week so far. There's a lot cracking across the sporting landscape. Also, too, man, we got the Boston Celtics, man, being sold, man, for $6.1 billion. It's the biggest purchase of any sports team just across the slate. And, man, I guess it's the old adage, man, you got to sell while you're hot. Boston Celtics, reigning NBA champions. They have been on the market. Former owner Wick Grosbeck, definitely put them out there on the market as they sold for $6.1 billion. Man, that's a big bag of coin. Also, too, man, in this episode, I'm going to get into Chi-Town Zone, man. Chi-Town's finest, man. I got an opportunity to watch this gentleman, man, hoop. Went to high school in my neighborhood, graduated Crane High School, moved on to Oklahoma State University after having a stint in junior college. Known as the Grindfather, drafted by the Boston Celtics, moved on to the Memphis Grizzlies. And he got his jersey retired the other day, man. And it was a great thing, man. And Tony Allen, I'm going to absolutely get into that, man. He just represent what I consider the old guard across the NBA, man. Is just first team all defense. Had the infamous quote, "Who he lock?" Man, that's my guy, man. Definitely got to send some flowers out to Tony Allen. And also, too, getting it in with his podcast he got going on with Zebo. Also, too, man, across the NBA slate, can't forget about the National Basketball Association. We got Steph Curry going down with an injury last night with the Golden State Warriors. And, man, that's a huge injury, man. Steph Curry had a nice little fall, man, went out with a pelvic injury. Not sure, what his playing status is going to be moving forward for the Golden State Warriors as they try to move up the ladder in the Wild Western Conference. And so we're going to get into that, man, just to see how big of that's a blow, man, to the Golden State Warriors moving forward. Also, too, man, across the National Football League, man, it's still out there, man, for these quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers still looking for a new home. Also, too, you got Russell Wilson out there looking for a new home. So I'm going to speak a little bit on that as well. But as we transition, man, to the NCAA Tournament, not sure if a bunch of you guys took day off of work, definitely to check out the early slate of the NCAA Tournament that jumped off on Thursday, man. But it's a nice little thing. And I'm going to get into my predictions across the NCAA Tournament. Last show, I didn't get into my Final Four predictions and what I think is going to jump off across the NCAA landscape in the tournament. As I mentioned, man, it's just a great time of the year. Just basketball just revved up to 100. Can't forget about the women's tournament also, too, jumping off today as well. But in this men's tournament, man, and first I'll start off here, man, with the SEC getting 14 teams into the tournament. It's the most, a conference has ever gotten into the tournament. Some conferences out here don't even have 14 teams, man. So this just been a big-time season for the SEC, to say the least. We got these big-time head coaches in the NCAA tournament again, trying to get them another national championship. UConn in this tournament, man, they going for a three-peat. They play today, Friday afternoon. We'll see what they do. They had a down season, man. Danny Hurley trying to go unprecedented, with the three-peat. There hadn't been a team that three-peated, man, since the UCLA days, man, back in the 70s, man. The Bill Walton and, Lou Alcindor / Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the great John Woodens of the world. And so I'm going to get into this thing, man. And first and foremost, I'm going to say this, is that, I love a good Cinderella. It's just the landscape of college basketball now. You got the transfer rule, name, image, and likeness. And so this year, man, it's going to be interesting because, I've been looking at a lot of people predictions, who they predict to get to the Final Four. And a lot of people believe that this year, man, is going to be 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. And I'm one of those people just to say, not so fast. Not so fast. I think there's good parity across college basketball just as a whole. But I'm going to get right into it, man. And I'm going to start off, man, with my Elite 8, man. Guys or teams that I feel that, definitely get to the Elite 8. And towards the top of the bracket, man, this is a team that was number 1 all season long. Well, most of the regular season, rather. They finished, I believe, 3rd overall in the AP poll, man, when the final poll came out. But I got the Auburn Tigers, man. I got them, moving on to the Elite 8 in this tournament, as well as I got them matching up with Michigan State. And first and foremost, man, Tom Izzo, one of those coaches I mentioned a little bit earlier, national champion, last Big Ten team to win a national championship. Can you guys believe it's been 25 years since a Big Ten team has won a national championship? And that was Tom Izzo back in 2000 with the Flintstones. And I think this team, man, they came into the regular season, a lot of low expectations for Michigan State, but that's not a knock on Tom Izzo as a coach. I just think that, there's a lot of parity across college basketball, but the season that Michigan State Spartans have had this year with Tom Izzo has been great. Shout out, man, to, just the Big Ten as a whole is my favorite conference because I'm from Big Ten country. And I got Michigan State getting into the Elite 8 along with Auburn. And shout out to Trace Richardson as well, son of Jason Richardson, former slam dunk champion, NBA player. He's had a good season so far. So I think Michigan State, they'll mosey on and get into the Elite 8. On the other side is the top part of the bracket, man. I got Duke getting into the Elite 8. They're number 1 seed. A lot of people feel that Duke will win the national championship this year. And, we'll see, man, with, Cooper Flagg having an outstanding year. I think he'll win the National College Player of the Year award. John Shire has done a great job, man, at Duke this year. It's just a heavy crown, man, replacing Coach K at Duke, but he's done a great job at Duke. He's a Chicagoland native, too. Got a chance to watch John play in high school as well. And so I got Duke getting into the Elite 8, as well as another SEC team that I think that, get into the Elite 8 as well, is one of the highest scoring teams across college basketball, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide. Just the job that Nate Oates has done down there, the head coach of Alabama over the last couple of years. He's definitely turned Alabama into a powerhouse on the basketball side. So I got them going to the Elite 8 as well. Also, too, man, down at the bottom of the bracket, the West and the Midwest bracket, man, I got Florida, number 1 seed this year. They've had an outstanding year, man, a great run across the SEC as well as the SEC tournament. And they're probably, man, the hottest team coming into the tournament, just as far as, how they play. Just the guard play from Florida, man, has been outstanding. They're a well-balanced team, well-coached team. So I got Florida getting into the Elite 8 representing the SEC. Also, too, man, a team that I've watched a little bit this year, man, they coming out of the Big 12, man, and they've had an outstanding year. I love the balance of this basketball club, man. They play great. Play a fast-paced, style of basketball, man, very athletic. And I'm talking about the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I got them getting into the Elite 8 as well. And I think they've had an outstanding year. And I think the Big 12 has been kind of low-key. Kansas has had not a good year. And Bill Self, as they got eliminated, last night by the University of Arkansas and John Calipari. But I think that the Big 12 has been kind of underlooked just simply based on the fact that the SEC has just been such a juggernaut this year. So I got Texas Tech moving on to the Elite 8 as well. On the other side in the Midwest bracket, man, I got the Houston Cougars, man. The Houston Cougars, number 1 seed this year, man. They won the Big 12 tournament. They've had an outstanding year, man. They've been on a roll probably the last month and a half of the year. They got 4 losses on the year, but all the losses that they've had has been very, very close ball clubs, man. And Kevin Sampson, just the job he's done down there at the University of Houston has been very impressive over the last couple of years. And I got them moving on to the Elite 8. And then I got another SEC team, man, a team that they've been playing well this season so far. They fell up short in the SEC tournament, man, but I've been keeping my eye on them all year. And that's the Tennessee Volunteers, man. I got Tennessee moving on to the Elite 8 as well in this tournament, man. I just think that they're battle-tested. I just think that they got some good, head coaching, a good balance, team overall. And, I just like their guard play, man. Their guard play has been outstanding so far this year, man. And I just like the swag on this basketball team, man. And I think they low-key, I think a lot of people have not given them enough credit of the season they've had so far this year. So that's my Elite Eight, man. That's my Elite Eight. And then we transition to the Final Four. In the Final Four, man, as I mentioned to you guys, man, I don't have 4 number 1 seeds as most, but I got Auburn moving on to the Elite Eight. I think they're good enough to knock off Michigan State. I think they're a well-balanced team. I just think that, Bruce Pearl, the job he's done so far this year, I think he got this team right, man, for a long tournament run. So I got them getting into the Final Four. And also 2 out of the SEC, because there's 14 teams, as I mentioned, got into the tournament this year. And so I think that, a nice little bulk of them are going to build up the Final Four. And I got Florida, man, moving on to the Final Four, man. And that matchup between Auburn and Florida, I believe, man, is going to be one of the best and competitive basketball games we've seen all year. These teams have locked horns during the regular season. I think they match up again, man, in the Final Four. And also, too, on the other side, man, I got another SEC team, man. My third SEC team in the Final Four. And the last time we've had 3 teams from the same conference in the Final Four was 1985, representing the Big East with St. John's, Georgetown, and Villanova. As I mentioned to you guys last episode, that was my first Final Four. I remember watching with my pops, man, on the floor model back in 1985 as a youngin'. It's the last time we seen 3 teams from one conference get into the Final Four. So I got Alabama moving on with Nate Oates, man, just the high-power offense that the University of Alabama has, man. I just think they got a good enough firepower offensively, man, to move on and get themselves to the Final Four. In the Final Four team, man, I got moving on, man, into the Final Four is the University of Houston. I just think that, man, Houston at the end of the day, man, they just one of the best defensive teams. I think overall, man, the best defensive team in college basketball. They've had an outstanding run during the Big 12, winning the Big 12 championship. So I got them moving on to the Final Four. And just to recap, man, I got Auburn, Florida, Alabama, and Houston representing the Final Four down in San Antonio. And also, too, man, in that Auburn and Florida matchup, I just think that, at the end of the day, I just think that, the Florida Gators, I think they good enough, man, to move into the Final Four, to the championship game. Last time this team got into an NCAA Final Four in the championship game was 2007. I was in the building down in Atlanta. I know you guys probably remember, man, as we had the repeat champions with Joakim Noah, Billy Donovan, Al Horford. Just a great run. Can't forget about Corey Brewer. And so I got Florida moving on to the national championship game. And then on the flip side of that, I got the Houston Cougars knocking off the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I just think that Houston, man, it just got, and this is going to be a great matchup, too. A high-powered offensive team against a stout defensive team. I just think Kevin Sampson, I just think it's his time, man, with this Houston team, man. As I mentioned, defense win games. And I just think that the Houston Cougars move on into that matchup and get themselves into the national championship game. And finally, is my national champions, man. My national champions this year, man, down in San Antonio, man. It's a state of Texas, man. Some great basketball down there, man. Great recruits. Just a great basketball scene, man, down in the Texas area, man. But I got the Houston Cougars winning the national championship this year. I think Kevin Sampson, man, I just think it's his time, man. He's just been a long tenure head coach. I remember him at the University of Oklahoma and the great job he did there. Got into a few issues, man, down there at Oklahoma. But he built his career back, man, and built Houston into a juggernaut. And I just think that this year, man, I think the Houston Cougars, man, cut down the nets. So that's who I got as my national champion this year. We'll definitely see, man, what it do across this bracket. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Coming up, we'll get into a few NBA things. Also, too, man, just to slate across the National Football League, a few little tidbits. And also, too, can't forget about, giving them flowers out to my man Tony Allen, man, getting his jersey retired, man, from the Memphis Grizzlies. I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. Welcome back. And we're moseying on along in the NBA season as teams right now jockeying for positions in the Eastern and Western Conference. As far as the playoff seeding, some teams are trying to avoid the whole play-in situation across the NBA landscape. So it's definitely an exciting part of the year. And there's one little caveat, one little situation across the NBA I definitely want to speak on, man, in a good way. As we had the other day, the Memphis Grizzlies retired the jersey of Tony Allen. Tony Allen, man, Chi-Town native, Chicago native. I had the opportunity to watch Tony Allen play in high school, played at Crane High School, which at the time was one of the powerhouses on the west side of Chicago, in my neck of the woods, in my neighborhood, literally walking distance from my home in Chicago at the time, as I played at high school. I was right up the street from it as well. That's known for basketball in the Basketball Factory, Westinghouse High School. And so got a chance to definitely see Tony Allen as well as a former NBA player, Will Bynum, play. And they had an outstanding year. Will Bynum, went on to play at Arizona as well as Georgia Tech. Also, too, played in the NBA for a number of seasons. Unfortunately, have been in the news most recently for the little insurance scandal situation with Terrence Williams. A couple guys, man, took a L and went to jail on that whole situation. So well wishes first and foremost, man, to Will Bynum. I hope, he can get everything back on P for him. But Tony Allen, man, the grindfather, known as the grindfather, man. This is a guy that worked his way all the way up. Moved on to junior college, went to 2 junior colleges, as well as went on to Oklahoma State University, playing under the late great Eddie Sutton. And they went on a run. They went on a Final Four run, got to the Final Four as well as Will Bynum did with Georgia Tech. And, just a great job of, just getting themselves in a situation, man, to be a professional basketball player. Just coming out, the city of Chicago, man, there's a lot of obstacles, a lot of hurdles that won't allow you to kind of get, to where you want to be and get to your destiny. But Tony Allen represented that, man. And first and foremost, man, Tony Allen is a good dude as far as I know. Was a guy that, always came back and showed love. But he got it out the mud. Drafted by the Boston Celtics, played on that great team with Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. And they was able to win an NBA championship under Doc Rivers. And they were a grimy type of basketball team, man. Once they hit up with the big three and linked up, they hit the ground running. And Tony Allen was a huge part of that. As the late, great Kobe Bryant would say, man, he was the best defender to ever guard him in his NBA career. And that says a lot. That says a lot, man, especially coming from, where he comes from. But, he never took things for granted. He was a guy that got it out the mud. And just with his podcast that he's doing right now with Zebo, his teammate in Memphis, with the great Memphis run that they did, it's just a perfect euphemism, man, for them. Because both of those guys, Midwest guys, Zebo coming from Indiana, they got it out the mud, man. And just a great job they're doing. Shout out to them, man, with their whole podcast. I'm definitely a fan of their podcast and what they do over there. But he's a guy that, the city of Memphis, they embraced. He went there after, signing a free agent deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. And Lionel Hollins, the head coach at the time, man, him, Marc Gasol, can't forget about Zebo, as well as Mike Conley Jr. They went on a nice little playoff run, man. I'll never forget them knocking off the San Antonio Spurs, and just what a great series that was years back. In Memphis, they're a small market team. And the thing about Memphis, if you guys have never been there, is that Memphis not only represents the state of Tennessee, but they represent, because they sit right on the border, they represent, the state of Arkansas, also too, the state of Mississippi. And just their fan base are just hardworking people that love to come out and watch great basketball, and, just the great things they're doing right now with Ja Morant. But I thought it was a good thing that they retired his jersey, because he's the fabric of the Memphis Grizzlies. He's known as the grindfather. First team all defense, as they would say, and a guy that just never cheated the game. He always worked on his game and got himself right. And so well wishes to him. I think, it was just a good ceremony with Derrick Rose speaking up highly of him. Also, too, Joakim Noah and Paul Pierce came out also, too. And his family was there. So it was a good situation. And I like to see this, especially for a guy that never made an all-star team. A guy that didn't go out there and drop 25 and 30 points a game, just for the organization to raise his jersey up high for everybody that comes into the FedEx Arena, FedEx Forum, is that they get a chance, man, just to see and reminisce just back on the great career that Tony Allen had for not only the Boston Celtics, but also to the Memphis Grizzlies. And speaking of the NBA, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we got some teams that's jockeying for position in the Eastern and Western Conference. And one of those teams that has gotten extremely hot over the last, say, month or so has been the Golden State Warriors. He brought in, Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Buckets, JB to the team. There was a lot of acrimony with his departure from the Miami Heat. And I was a little skeptical about Jimmy Butler because I believe Jimmy Butler was on diva mode down in Miami. And I'm going to shoot it straight. If you guys, obviously fans of the show, OGs of the show know, I was hard on Jimmy in that whole situation with his departure out of Miami. And for him to come in with the Golden State Warriors, he's been nothing but a positive situation for them. This team is hotter than a firecracker right now. And the reason I mentioned the Golden State Warriors is because we had an injury to Steph Curry last night. Steph Curry had a nice little fall last night, has a sternum injury, or a pelvic injury, actually. And I'm not sure what this is going to do for the momentum of the Golden State Warriors and what they're trying to do, say, moving forward. But I just like the positive vibes, what I'm seeing out of them. They didn't get an opportunity to make my NBA Big Five, but I think this is a team that may creep up in the NBA Big Five. You never know. Draymond Green came out, a couple weeks ago saying that he believes this team is a championship contender. I'm not going to go that far, just saying that he's a championship contender. They're a championship contender right now. So wait and see approach. And we're not sure how long the Steph Curry is going to be out and going to be on the men, say for them. Well, we'll definitely see and, dig back into that situation, once, he gets back on the court. But I wish, Steph Curry well wishes, one of the stewards of the NBA right now and just all what he does, not only on the court, but also off the court. So it's kind of sad to see Steph get hurt. But we'll see what the Golden State Warriors do moving forward. And another thing on the NBA tip that's been a very hot button issue across the NBA has been BRONNY James. And we've seen BRONNY James, I spoke my piece on BRONNY James. I thought when he got drafted, I didn't think that he was an NBA player and that he should have went down to the G League. And the Los Angeles Lakers, they brought him up in the early part of the year, and it wasn't a good situation for him. And there was a lot of people chiming in, good and bad, but I, take the stance on this, is that I feel at the end of the day that G League experience has been very fruitful for him. As we saw, last night, him dropping 17 points against the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm happy for BRONNY James. I'm happy for him because through all this, chatter and all this noise is that he stuck himself into the gym and worked on his game and kept his mouth shut. And I think that that's the best situation for him. I think it's the best situation for the James family. We obviously had that whole situation with Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James. With LeBron James approaching Stephen A. Smith, during the Lakers game. And I think that, both guys or both things can't be right. I kind of sided with Stephen A. with that situation from the standpoint of this. And I thought at the end of the day, LeBron James, he should have, privately met with Stephen A. and just had to talk man to man. But approach a man on the side, while the game is going on. And, Stephen A., a lot of people say whatever they need to say about Stephen A., good, bad, and ugly. I think that Stephen A. is an adult. And I think that he knows that at that time, it wasn't a good time to have a conversation with LeBron James or get into depth with him, especially during an NBA game. And so we'll see what it do moving forward. Like I said, I'm very, very happy and very, very proud for BRONNY James. I think he's definitely worked on his game. I was impressed with what I saw from him last night, having 30 points in the game, even though the Lakers, didn't win the game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I was happy for this kid, man. And like I said, the best thing that he needs to do is keep his mouth shut, work on his game, and simply get better. So that's my look across the NBA. As also too, another tidbit is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've dropped from, sitting at the top as far as just having the hottest win streak in the NBA, as they've lost a couple of games. Donovan Mitchell was nicked up a little bit, but he's back into the fold. And that's the ups and downs of the NBA season. I mean, you don't get to some point where you get hotter than a firecracker, and then you're going to have a couple, nights where you, not bring your best effort and get knocked off. So I think that at the end of the day, them and the Boston Celtics are the best two teams still in the East. I don't think this knocks them back, too far off of their perch. And so we'll see what it do moving forward for both of these organizations in the Eastern Conference. I think it's a two-team race. I think in the Western Conference, it is straight wide open. across the board. Oklahoma City sits at the top. I think they're going to clinch that number 1 seed. I don't think that nobody's going to knock them off the perch. I like what I'm seeing from the Houston Rockets and Ime Udoka. He's done a great job with this young ball club. Got them sitting in the 2nd seed. Denver's another team that I think that is a sleeping giant. They can definitely make an NBA playoff run. It just depends on the matchups in the Western Conference. And so we'll see what that thing do, but that's my look across the NBA spectrum. First of all, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. Before we get out of here, man, I got to talk about the National Football League. As, man, we're gearing up for the NFL draft. We just had the whole free agency thing across all 32 teams in the National Football League. And there's a couple free agents that's out there that's noteworthy. And the most noteworthy free agent we have out here is Aaron Rodgers. Where will Aaron fall? Now, a couple days ago, there was a lot of reports about the Minnesota Vikings just expressing their non-interest in Aaron Rodgers as they want to move forward with J.J. McCarthy as a starting quarterback going into next season. J.J. McCarthy, last year, his year ended up pretty much a non-year as he got injured during the preseason. And the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold went on a nice little run, 14-3 in the regular season. They flamed out in the NFL playoffs in the NFC. As Sam Darnold moved on to the Seattle Seahawks. And that opened up a spot for J.J. McCarthy to be the starting quarterback. But there was a lot of teams or a lot of people that felt that, the best situation for Aaron Rodgers was Minnesota. And me being one of them. I thought that the Minnesota Vikings was a plug-and-play situation for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, just look at the weapons that they have with Justin Jefferson. You got T.J. Hawkinson there. You got Aaron Jones still playing some good football, Jordan Addison. And so I love the offensive pieces that the Minnesota Vikings presently have. I'm not sure about J.J. McCarthy, though. I'm a skeptic, meaning that he didn't throw the football a lot at the University of Michigan playing for John Harbaugh. And I just think that, Jim Harbaugh, rather. And I just think that, for me, it's a wait-and-see approach with J.J. McCarthy. Because I feel that he could be the next coming. Or he could be just an average NFL quarterback. Now, I think that the Minnesota Vikings, one of the reasons they didn't want to bring Aaron Rodgers into the fold, they felt like potentially Aaron Rodgers can be a distraction. And I can't argue that because there's always baggage with Aaron Rodgers, to say the least. Now, I felt Aaron Rodgers had a good year last year with the New York Jets. Now, the Jets, they didn't make the playoffs, and it was an underwhelming year, and they cleaned house and brought in a new head coach in Aaron Glenn. But I think when you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers, he didn't play bad. But I don't think that at 40 years old, he's good enough to carry an NFL team without the right pieces and the right locker room behind him. And I thought that Minnesota could supply that. Now, with that being said, as the dominoes fall, we have a situation now where the Pittsburgh Steelers is in a precarious situation. I think that them and Aaron Rodgers, they need to have a conversation if they haven't had a conversation already. Mike Tomlin, I think that this team now with the acquisition of DK Metcalf, they could be in a good situation. As far as bringing in Aaron Rodgers, a guy that can be a bridge quarterback for them. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they always make the playoffs. This is a team that always make the playoffs under Mike Tomlin. There's been a situation the last couple of years with them being one and done in the playoffs. That's a whole nother conversation. But overall, I think that might be the final situation for Aaron Rodgers. I don't see him playing pretty much past next season. So he could be a good bridge situation. Speaking of a bridge situation, I think that Russell Wilson is in the same situation. Former Super Bowl champion. I think he had a good year in Pittsburgh last year. He got hurt or was hurt, coming into the season. But once he got under center, he played some good football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I believe that Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think he runs a generic offense. And as we saw towards the end of the season, the air was let out of the balloon in their offense. Now, you got, George Pickens over there as well as DK Metcalf now. And I would be remiss if I wouldn't say that, Russell Wilson could be a good candidate to go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It could be still in the cards here. And we never know with Aaron Rodgers, man. He could wake up today and say, hey, man, look, I'm signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That situation could happen at any moment now. But these are the two big heavyweights as far as quarterbacks, just in the free agent pool as we transition to the NFL draft. So we'll definitely see what both of those guys end up at. But, I had to speak my piece on that situation because I think, NFL is a quarterback league. And so both these guys, to me, can still play. I think they could be vital cogs if the situation is right, say, for both of them. I think that, one is waiting on the other. I think that Russell Wilson is pretty much waiting to see where Aaron Rodgers lands. So, they could be in potential play, and I'll put a dark horse team out there. They could be in play in Cleveland. Cleveland might be a situation for both of these gentlemen. So we'll see what that do. But first and foremost, man, if it's first time listening to the show, I appreciate the check-in. We bring hot fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. If you're an OG of the show, welcome back. I appreciate all the love and the feedback on that end. Definitely got to send a special shout out to the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast, my man Mako and East Eileen, Mr. Taylor Street, as they provide as well as good content on the sports betting front and across the whole sporting landscape as well. Definitely don't forget to check your boy out on Facebook. Also, too, on YouTube, We On Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, on Twitter at We On Fire Sports. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you guys enjoy the NCAA Tournament as it's jumping off as we speak right now. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We On Fire Sports Podcast. The spot.